Alright, it's time to do some more world building as we continue to flesh out the city of Myrkhos using the roll tables from Shadowdark RPG. Hi everybody, I'm Michael from Night Noon Games, and you've found your way to one of my world building videos. There's a link to my previous world building videos up here somewhere if you want to catch up, but if you haven't seen them, no worries, you can just jump right in. If you like these videos though, don't forget to subscribe. Anyways, let's get on to the dice rolling. The next district we're going to roll up is the Western Low District. Using the rules in Shadowdark, we first start by rolling a d4 to determine how many points of interest there are here. Then you roll a d6 on the points of interest table for the low district to determine what those points of interest are. In this case, I rolled a 1 on my d4 and then rolled a 5 on my d6. So I know that we're going to be rolling up a standard shop. Shops have their own roll tables, so I rolled a d10 to determine that this is either a herald or a town crier. If you've seen my other videos, you probably know I also like to roll up an NPC at each location, so I can just roll 5 dice at a time for this. Those are a d12 for ancestry, a d20 for the NPC's name, a d8 for their age, and 2 d6s, 1 each for their alignment and then wealth. In this case, I rolled an 11, 14, 7, 1, and 2. So we know that this herald or town crier in Myrkhos is a half-orc. For the name, I had rolled Kresh, but we already have a half-orc named Kresh, the freedom fighter running the safe house in the Northern Low District. So instead, I'll just roll on the NPC's names by syllable table. I really love rolling on this table because essentially the variety of names that you can get with it are, for all intents and purposes, endless. If I did my math correctly, which if I didn't, make sure to correct me down in the comments, I believe there's 160,000 different combinations that you can get here. I rolled a 19, 8, 9, and 17, so we know that this half-orc's name is Toronaronne. The rest of those rolls revealed that Toronaronne is elderly, lawful, and has a standard amount of wealth. I was quickly running out of room on this piece of paper, so I figured I should probably get a new one for rolling up the Artisan District. Again, I rolled a d4 to determine the number of points of interest within the Artisan District, and I rolled a 4. I rolled a d6 to determine what each of those would be, and rolled a 3, 4, 5, and 6. So, we know that the Artisan District has a modest temple, 2 standard taverns, and a wealthy shop. I think I'll actually combine the 2 standard taverns into 1 wealthy tavern, so I don't end up rolling tavern after tavern after tavern after tavern, even though rolling taverns is pretty fun. The first point of interest I'll flesh out here is the temple. There are 7 deities in the core rules for Shadowdark. To determine which deity is going to be worshipped at this temple, I'm just going to roll a d8, and if I happen to roll an 8, I would just ignore it and re-roll. So on this roll, I rolled a 2, so I know that this temple is dedicated to the goddess Gedean, a neutral god and the god of feasts, mirth, and the wilds. She is usually peaceful, but primal storms may rage when her anger rises. Since Gedean is a popular goddess among elves and halflings, I think I'm just going to make whoever the priest is running the temple either an elf or a halfling, rather than just leaving it up to chance like I do with most NPCs. Remember, when you're world building or if you're playing solo, you get to just do whatever you think makes the most sense and whatever would be the most fun for you. Don't feel like you have to make everything totally random because you totally don't have to. So I just rolled odds or evens, and since I rolled evens, I determined that this priest is going to be an elf. Now I just have to roll for the name, age, alignment, and how wealthy they are. I got a 10, 7, 6, and a 2, and apparently I accidentally looked at the dwarf name table instead of the elf name table. So this elf is going to have the unique name of Brigg. Maybe that can play into their backstory somehow. Maybe they were raised by dwarves or something like that. Brigg is also elderly, chaotic, and has a standard amount of wealth. The thing that stood out to me about Brigg, other than them having a dwarven name, is that they're chaotic. So why would a chaotic priest be worshipping this god and being in charge of this temple that honors Gedean, a neutral god? I think we can tie this into the backstory of the city. As we know, Myrkhos is under siege. It's been taken over by some sort of villain or villainous organization who are trying to get more power in the region and influence the locals however they can. So I think what happened here is that the Gedean priest, who is usually here, was removed by this power, by these villains, and replaced with Brigg. So Brigg is sort of a puppet for them to help control the populace here. I also think that would make a really good adventuring hook for any party that's exploring the city to say, hey, what happened to the priest that was here? Have they been captured, or exiled, or even worse? And if they are still alive, could we somehow bring them back to the city and put them back in power in the temple that they should be overseeing? Personally, I think that would be a ton of fun. Next, we're moving on to the Wealthy Tavern. The Tavern Names table might be my favorite table in all of the Shadowdark rules, so I always have a really good time when I get a roll on it. I rolled a 17, an 11, and a 13, so we know that this tavern is called the Drunken Snake, and that they're known for their underground pit fighting. The first thing that came to my mind when I read underground pit fighting is that it actually ties in with the name of the tavern. So I think that they're actually not humanoids fighting down there, but it's actually like a snake fighting pit, which I think might be kind of cool. Obviously, if this was real life, it would be totally horrible to have a snake fighting pit in any bar, no matter how seedy. But since this is a fantasy world, I'm gonna go with it since it sounds pretty cool. And I think it's a pretty memorable thing for the adventurers to learn, and that's really important when making locations. I should note here that everyone in real life has their own sensitivities, and violence against domesticated animals is a pretty common one. Maybe since these aren't dogs, people would be okay with it, but either in a session 0 or, even before they got to this tavern, you might just want to check in with all of your players and say, hey, there might be some violence against domesticated animals here. Are you all okay with that? If someone isn't, I wouldn't sweat it. It's easy enough just to change this aspect of the bar. For instance, you could maybe just have the bar have some sort of an illegal snake breeding operation in the basement instead. That's still kind of insidious, but it probably isn't as terrible as forcing snakes to fight one another. As for the food and drinks that the Drunken Snake is known for, since this is a wealthy tavern, I roll 4 d12s on the drinks table. And then on the foods table, I'll roll 2 d12s on the standard food list and 2 d12s on the wealthy food list. For the drinks, I rolled a 6, 2, 3, and then another 2, but I re-rolled that second 2 and got a 7. So we know that the Drunken Snake is known for their house ale, watered down swill, vinegary wine, and their autumn mead. That one actually does sound pretty good. For the food table, I rolled a 10, 6, 9, and 8. This means that they're known for a spit-roasted, well, the roll tables say boar, but I think it might be more cool to have it be something else. Maybe it would be the spit-roasted snakes that died in the fighting pit. Then they're also known for their spicy veal curry, dire lobster tail, and roasted stingbat. Sounds tasty. Then I just have to roll up the NPC that's running this tavern. I rolled a 12, a 2, another 2, and a 1, so we know that this is going to be an adolescent goblin who is both lawful and poor. As for the qualities table, I rolled a 11, 10, and 19, so we know that this goblin is sweaty, swears oaths, and is a retired crawler. The dice have presented me with 2 new juxtapositions here. First, this is a wealthy tavern, so why is the proprietor poor? Also, how are they both adolescent and also a retired crawler? For the first item, I think that this tavern really just seems wealthy on the surface. If you dug a little bit deeper, you might notice that it's being held together by duct tape and bubblegum. Really, the whole thing is just a house of cards waiting to collapse. So I think this goblin isn't really making a ton of money on it. Maybe they're just bad at business, because, they're a kid. And maybe this is why they started having snake fights in the basement too, because they weren't pulling enough money in otherwise to pay the bills. Finally, I rolled again on the name syllables table and got a 1, 8, and 2 5s. Ironzinne. I think that's a pretty cool name. The last location I'm going to roll up here in the Artisan District is a wealthy shop. I've got to go over to the shops table. I rolled on that, and I rolled a 9, so we know that this is a master blacksmith. To determine who this blacksmith is, I rolled an 8, 2, 8, 5, and 2. So we know this person is a dwarf named Toronaronne. Well, I guess we already have a dwarf named Toronaronne. That's the priest in the temple in Treefell. Check out this video for more information on him. So I guess I'll just re-roll this, and I rolled a 1 this time. So this dwarf is actually named Hera, who is ancient, chaotic, and has the standard amount of wealth. For Hera's characteristics, I rolled a 3, 2, and a 15. So we know that she is very tall, she's always eating, and she's been cast out of a wealthy family. Since dwarves are famously not very tall, I think it'd be fun to say that this dwarf has some sort of genetic abnormality that makes them like 6 feet tall. So I think it'd be really funny if people often confuse them for a human. And maybe that's why they were cast out of their family as well. So it might be a bit of a sore spot for them. I think if all of that happened to me, that would make me feel pretty chaotic, so I think that explains why Hera's chaotic as well. At this point, we're about halfway done rolling up all of the districts in the city of Myrkhos. So far, we've taken care of the Northern Low District, the Western Low District, and the Artisan District. So the only ones we have left to do are the slums, the marketplace, which we also know is going to be be the seat of power in the city, and then the Southern Low District. I think I have something special in mind for that, so I'm actually really excited to be rolling that up here in an upcoming video. If you found this video interesting, make sure to give the video a like and subscribe to my channel, and you can see more Shadowdark videos that I'm working on, or just more world building videos in general. I also have the outline for the City of Myrkhos down in the notes below that you can download and use in your campaign if you want. If you're interested in free dragon turtle lore, and I think that's going to be tying into this world building here pretty soon, you can subscribe to my newsletter and I'll send some over to you. You can find the link to that down in the notes below, as well as a link to my Instagram and my itch.io page where you can see some of the games I've made, and some free tools that I've made that will help your Shadowdark world building. Until our next adventure, stay inspired and keep those dice rolling. Thanks for watching.